And our word for today on this memorial of the Holy Guardian Angels on this Wednesday, October the 2nd, our word for today is greatest. Greatest, our word for today, and here to talk about it, Deacon Dan Brahier. Good morning, Deacon Dan.
Good morning, Dave. How are you?
Doing great. How are you this morning?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you very much. We've got a really nice word of the day today in greatest. There is so much to be said there. But the first thought that popped into my head was I have a cousin who formerly was an engineer for a company that makes appliances. And one time he and I were in a conversation, and I said, "Is there really such thing as planned obsolescence?" We hear about that all the time.
Right.
Like, you actually build refrigerators so they die in 3 years and make people buy new ones. And he said that was definitely not the case. And he said the object of his engineering is not planned obsolescence. It's to create new products that have features that are so amazing that people just can't resist buying them. That people will go for the latest, greatest thing. And so they're not going to wait for the refrigerator to break. They're going to want to replace it with a new one that has these greatest features in it. And so it was a really good reminder to me that we live in this world where people just constantly strive to be the greatest at things and to own the greatest products. We consider everything from running marathons to the Olympics, which, by the way, there's nothing inherently wrong about any of those things, but they are examples of individuals that are trying to prove that they're better than anybody else at a particular feat, And so I was thinking about the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. What does the wicked queen do? She walks to the mirror every day and says, "Magic mirror on the wall, who's the greatest of them all?" In other words, she wants to do a daily check to make sure she's still on top. And then she gets really angry when Snow White takes that title. So we see that attitude throughout the Gospels, actually, and it's just amazing to me that the apostles, and Dave, you nailed it this morning when you said it's not like this is in chapter 2. The apostles have been around Jesus for 3 years, and they're still trying to figure out, who's the greatest among the group. And remember, James and John in Mark's Gospel approached Jesus, and they asked him, when he comes into his glory, can we be seated at your right and your left, numbered among the greatest? And the other apostles get upset, and Jesus reminds them, he says, "Whoever wishes to be great among you will be your servant," and that he came to serve and not be served. So in today's gospel, kind of with that backdrop, now we're in Matthew, and the disciples ask Jesus, "Who's the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" They still don't get it. They want to know who's greatest here. It's that human drive to know, am I better than everybody else? And after showing them a child and telling them that they need to become like children, he tells them, "Whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven." So he turns that whole prevailing worldview kind of upside down. He reminds us that we're only great when we think ourselves otherwise and we go about our lives in humility. Padre Pio, St. Padre Pio, whose feast day we just celebrated a week or so ago, he famously said, "I only want to be a poor friar who prays." He didn't seek to be in the public eye. He didn't want to be honored. He didn't even want to be noticed. But God had plans for him that he hadn't anticipated. And part of what makes him such a great saint is he never thought he was in the first place, and he didn't seek the attention. So I often reflect on that as kind of as a deacon in the church. I will never forget, I was ordained a little over 7 years ago, and at our ordination, Bishop Thomas reminded us of something that Cardinal Dolan of New York had once said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it was something to the effect of, if a deacon does his job well, the average person in the parish won't even notice that he's there. So, if people say something to you for doing something well, you take it as a compliment because they probably didn't even know that you were involved. So,
right.
If I assist the priest at Mass, in an ideal world, when Mass is over, if he asks a parishioner whether I was there, it would be a compliment for the person to say, "I have no idea. I didn't even notice."
Right.
So as deacons, if we're truly going to be servants of the church, we never want to be noticed. And Jesus is basically saying the same thing to his apostles. This is not about being on top. This is not about being noticed. It's not about being the greatest. It's being humble and doing the work of God. And I think it's great that this particular reading is used today on this memorial of the guardian angels, because it does, obviously, the word angels is used in that reading, But bigger picture here, we're reminded that human beings are called to be as humble as the angels. You know, their entire existence is hidden from sight. You don't see angels. You can't talk to angels. Well, you can, but you don't hear them back. You know, they're serving God, and they're serving God without being noticed. And so among the holy angels, there would never be room for fighting over who's the greatest, because they're simply servants of God in doing God's will. I always find it fascinating that there's two different places in the book of Revelation where John tries to bow down and worship at the foot of an angel. And in both cases, the angel says, don't do that. You know, only God is worthy of worship. Don't do that. Don't put me in the spotlight here. And so the question for us today is, should we be any different? You know, today we go forth and we serve God, not to be noticed, not to be recognized as the greatest, but to seek our place as the least, like a child.
I love that, Deacon Dan. And this, I never thought of it, but the angels serving God without being noticed. You're exactly right, and we long to do the same thing. It shouldn't be surprising to us that we're tempted to go the other way, right? We just have to call upon the grace to overcome it.
Exactly. And we can pray for the intercession of our guardian angels, who are a great example of what it means to serve in humility.
So true. Well, I love it. Terrific reflection as always. Saved the show once again, Deacon Dan Brahier.
We do what we can. I still have the image of picking up the fingers, but anyway.
Thank you, Deacon.
Have a great day. Hopefully you'll join us tomorrow on Morning Offering.